I woke up that morning with the same sour taste in my mouth and that strange twisting feeling deep in my stomach for the third week in a row. At first, I thought it was stress, or maybe bad coffee, or maybe the fact that my husband, Daniel, had been acting different. I pushed the thought away and rolled out of bed slowly, pressing my palm against my stomach as another wave of nausea rolled through me. "Ugh," I whispered. The bathroom floor was cold against my feet. I leaned over the sink, breathing slowly, staring at my reflection. Pale, dark circles, hair a mess. "Wow, you look amazing," I muttered to myself. The door creaked open behind me. Daniel leaned against the frame, already dressed for work, perfectly calm as always. "You sick again?" he asked. Again. That word bothered me, like he'd been expecting it. "Yeah," I said, rinsing my mouth. "Just the usual morning thing." He watched me carefully, too carefully. "Maybe you should see a doctor." I shrugged. "Probably just stress." He nodded, but his eyes lingered on me a second too long before he left. Something about that look stayed with me all morning. By the time I got to work, the nausea had settled a little. I manage a small art gallery downtown. Quiet job, lots of old paintings and wealthy collectors pretending to understand modern art. Normally, it's peaceful. That day, though, everything felt slightly off, like the air was heavier. My assistant, Chloe, glanced at me as I walked in. "You look like you fought a ghost." "It feels like it," I said, dropping my bag. I grabbed a bottle of water and sat behind the desk. Then the nausea came back, harder. I rushed to the restroom again. Chloe knocked on the door. "Okay, seriously, you pregnant?" I laughed weakly from inside. "Absolutely not. At least, I thought not. Daniel and I had been trying for years. Nothing ever happened. Doctors told us not to get our hopes up. Eventually, we stopped trying. So pregnancy? Not likely. Still, the thought sat in my mind like a tiny seed. That afternoon, I left work early. I told Chloe I needed fresh air, but really I just needed to walk. The city streets were busy, people moving fast, car horns, chatter, the usual chaos. I wandered into a small jewelry store without even thinking about it. It was one of those quiet, elegant places, with velvet displays and soft lighting, the kind of store that smells faintly like polished wood and money. A man behind the counter looked up. Older guy, maybe late 60s, thin glasses. "Good afternoon," he said warmly. "Hi, just looking." I wandered toward a display case. Then my fingers brushed against the chain around my neck. Daniel had given it to me 3 years ago, a delicate gold chain with a small pendant. I almost never took it off. Something about it always made me feel calm. Without thinking, I adjusted it. The jeweler's eyes snapped toward me, and suddenly his entire expression changed. He walked around the counter slowly. "Ma'am, may I see that necklace?" I hesitated. Sure?" I lifted the chain slightly so he could look. The moment he saw the pendant clearly, his face went pale. Not surprised, not impressed. Pale, like he had just seen something impossible. "Where did you get this?" he asked quietly. "My husband gave it to me." His hand trembled as he reached closer to inspect it. He turned the pendant slightly under the light. Then his eyes widened. "Take it off." I blinked. "What?" "Take it off," he said suddenly, louder now. My stomach dropped. "Why?" His voice shook. "Take it off." The entire store had gone silent. 2 other customers stared at us. I slowly unclasped the chain and placed it in his hand. The second it touched his palm, he sucked in a sharp breath. "Oh my God!" "What?" I asked. He turned the pendant over. My heart skipped, because I had worn that necklace for 3 years, and I had never noticed the tiny engraving on the back. The jeweler looked up at me. "You didn't know?" "Know what?" He hesitated, then whispered something that made my blood run cold. "This isn't just jewelry." My stomach twisted. "Then what is it?" He swallowed. "This is part of a set." My confusion deepened. Okay, so? He stared directly into my eyes. Only 3 were ever made. A strange chill crept up my spine. And his voice dropped to almost a whisper. The last time I saw one of these was 20 years ago. The store suddenly felt very small. And, I asked again, he turned the pendant under the light, and that one belonged to a woman who disappeared. My heart skipped. Disappeared? He nodded slowly, and the man who gave it to her was investigated for murder. My breath caught. No, that's impossible. The jeweler looked at me carefully. What did you say your husband's name was? Daniel. His eyes sharpened instantly. Daniel what? My voice felt tight in my throat. Daniel Carter. The jeweler froze. Completely. Then he slowly placed the necklace back in my hand. His voice was barely audible. You need to leave. What? Now. Confusion and fear collided inside my chest. Why? He leaned closer and whispered something that made my entire body go cold. Because the man who bought that necklace was also named Daniel. My mind spun. That's probably coincidence. The jeweler shook his head slowly. No. Why? He pointed to the engraving. Because the name carved on the back. My hands trembled as I flipped the pendant over again. The tiny engraving was clear now. 2 words. Not mine, not Daniel's. The jeweler finished the sentence quietly. Belongs to the missing woman. My pulse thundered. What does it say? He looked at me with a mix of pity and fear. Then he whispered it, and the moment I heard it, my stomach twisted violently, because that name was the same name Daniel sometimes called me in his sleep. I didn't realize I had stopped breathing until the jeweler gently slid a glass of water across the counter toward me. My hands were shaking so badly the pendant rattled against the glass surface as I picked it up. That name, I whispered. Are you sure? The jeweler didn't answer immediately. He just stared at the necklace like it was something dangerous. I'm certain, he said quietly. I engraved it myself. My chest tightened. You made this? Yes. My throat felt dry. For who? He hesitated again, like he was deciding how much to say. 20 years ago, a young man came into my shop, very confident, very polite. He wanted something special made for his girlfriend. My heart started pounding harder. Her name was... He didn't say it right away. Instead, he tapped the tiny engraving on the back of the pendant. That name. My fingers tightened around the chain. Did she ever come here? I asked. Yes, once. And? His face darkened. She seemed nervous. Nervous? He nodded slowly. She asked me something strange. What? The jeweler leaned against the counter. She asked me if I kept records of who bought jewelry. My stomach twisted again. What did you say? I told her yes, every piece is logged. And? He sighed. She looked relieved. Then she said something I didn't understand at the time. My pulse was hammering. What did she say? The jeweler looked me straight in the eyes. She said, "Good. If anything happens to me, someone will know who gave it to me." A cold wave ran through my body. Anything happens to her? He nodded. 2 weeks later, she disappeared. My grip tightened around the necklace. Did they ever find her? No. The word echoed in my head. No. What about the man who bought it? He shrugged slightly. The police questioned him, but there wasn't enough evidence. Do you remember his last name? The jeweler studied me for a moment. Then he asked softly, "Why does your husband have this necklace?" My mouth opened, but nothing came out, because suddenly I wasn't sure. Daniel had given it to me on our anniversary, He said it was vintage, said he found it at an estate sale. I had believed him without question, but now my stomach churned again. I rushed to the trash bin near the counter just in time. The nausea hit hard. When it passed, I wiped my mouth and leaned against the counter. "You should sit down," the jeweler said gently. I nodded and sat on the stool. My hands instinctively rested on my stomach. A strange thought crept into my mind. Chloe's voice echoed in my head. "You pregnant?" My heart skipped. No, that couldn't be it. Right? The jeweler watched me carefully. "You said this necklace came from your husband." "Yes." "What does he do?" "He's a real estate developer." "Age?" 43. The jeweler went very still. "How old are you?" 21. He exhaled slowly. "That lines up." My chest tightened. "What does that mean?" "The man who bought this necklace was in his early 20s back then." A heavy silence settled between us. Finally, I stood. "I should go." He nodded. "Probably a good idea." As I turned to leave, he spoke again. "Miss." I stopped. "If I were you," I turned back, "I would ask your husband where he really got that necklace." The entire walk home felt unreal. Cars passed, people talked, but all I could hear was the jeweler's voice in my head. She disappeared. The man who gave it to her was investigated. His name was Daniel. By the time I reached our house, my heart was racing. The lights inside were already on. Daniel's car sat in the driveway. He was home early. That almost never happened. I stepped inside slowly. "Daniel?" His voice came from the kitchen. "In here." I walked toward him, my hand gripping the necklace inside my pocket. He stood by the counter cutting vegetables like nothing in the world was wrong. He smiled when he saw me. "There you are." My chest felt tight. "You're home early." "Meeting got canceled." His eyes flicked to my face. "You okay? You look pale." "I'm fine." He studied me for a moment. Then his gaze dropped slightly. "To your necklace." My heart skipped because I'd forgotten. I wasn't wearing it. "Where is it?" he asked casually. "Oh, I took it off earlier." His knife stopped moving. "Why?" The room suddenly felt smaller. "I went into a jewelry shop." Silence. The knife slowly lowered onto the cutting board. Daniel turned to face me fully. "And?" My pulse thundered. The jeweler said something interesting. Daniel's expression didn't change. "What did he say?" I reached into my pocket and pulled out the pendant. Then I flipped it over so the engraving faced him. "I never noticed this before," I said. Daniel stared at the name. For just a split second, something flickered across his face. Not surprise, recognition, but it vanished almost instantly. He forced a small smile. "Probably the previous owner." "Really?" "Yeah." My voice came out quieter. "The jeweler said he made it." Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly. He remembers the man who bought it." A long pause filled the room. Then Daniel wiped his hands slowly with a towel. "And?" "He said the man's name was Daniel." The air between us went still. Daniel laughed softly. "That's a common name." My voice trembled slightly. "The woman who wore it disappeared." A long pause filled the room. Then Daniel stepped closer to me. Too close. His voice was calm, almost too calm. "Are you accusing me of something?" My heart pounded so loud I could hear it in my ears. "I'm just asking questions." His eyes locked onto mine. Then he reached out and gently took the necklace from my hand. "You shouldn't listen to random jewelers," he said softly. He clasped the chain back around my neck. His fingers lingered against my skin. Cold. "You've been feeling sick lately. "You're probably stressed." Maybe he was right. Maybe I was overthinking everything. But as he stepped away, I noticed something strange. His hand. It was shaking, just slightly. And that was when another wave of nausea hit me, stronger than ever. I rushed toward the bathroom again. Daniel followed me halfway down the hall. "You really should see a doctor," he called. I gripped the sink as the sickness passed. When I looked up at the mirror again, I noticed something. My necklace. The pendant had flipped over, the engraved name faced outward now. And suddenly, for the first time, I remembered something strange. 3 nights ago, Daniel had been asleep beside me, muttering, whispering a name, not mine, the same name on the necklace, and when I had asked him about it the next morning, he had looked me straight in the eyes and said, "I don't remember dreaming." But standing there in the bathroom, staring at that engraving, a terrifying thought crept into my mind. What if he hadn't been dreaming? And what if he hadn't forgotten her at all? That night, I barely slept. Daniel fell asleep almost instantly beside me, breathing slow and steady like always, one arm resting across his chest. In the darkness of our bedroom, the faint streetlight outside filtered through the curtains and cast soft shadows across his face. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening, watching. Every small movement he made felt louder than it should have been. At around 2 in the morning, he shifted slightly, turning toward me in his sleep. Then it happened again, a whisper, so quiet I almost thought I imagined it, but I didn't. His lips moved slightly against the pillow, and the name came out again, the same name, the name engraved on the pendant. My entire body went cold. I held my breath, afraid to move. His voice was soft, almost affectionate, like he was talking to someone he loved. "I told you, don't leave me." My stomach twisted painfully. For a moment, I thought he might wake up, but he didn't. His breathing returned to its slow rhythm. I stared at him in the dim light, the man I had been married to for 6 years, the man who kissed my forehead every morning, the man who brought me coffee when I worked late, the man who now whispered another woman's name in his sleep. I quietly slipped out of bed. The floor creaked softly under my feet as I stepped into the hallway. My nausea was back, worse than before. I pressed my hand against my stomach again. Chloe's voice echoed in my head. "You pregnant?" I tried to laugh it off earlier, but now the idea wouldn't leave my mind. At 3 in the morning, I found myself standing in the bathroom, holding a pregnancy test. I had bought it weeks ago out of habit. Hope dies slowly when you've spent years wanting something. My hands trembled slightly. "This is ridiculous," I whispered, but I took the test anyway. Then I sat on the cold bathroom floor, staring at the small white stick on the counter. The seconds felt like hours. My heart pounded louder and louder in my ears. Then I looked, and everything inside me stopped. 2 lines. I blinked, then looked again. Still there. Positive. My hand slowly moved to my stomach. A strange mix of emotions flooded through me all at once. Shock, disbelief, fear, and something else, something deeper, because suddenly a terrifying thought appeared in my mind. If I was pregnant, then I was tied to Daniel forever. And right now, I wasn't sure who Daniel really was. I heard the bedroom door creak open down the hallway. My heart jumped. Footsteps approached. I quickly grabbed the test and shoved it into the cabinet under the sink. The bathroom door opened. Daniel leaned against the frame, rubbing his eyes. "You okay?" he asked softly. I forced a smile. "Yeah, just couldn't sleep." He studied my face carefully. Then he stepped inside and wrapped his arms around me from behind. His chin rested lightly on my shoulder. "You're shaking," he murmured. "I'm tired." He looked at me in the mirror. His expression was calm, too calm. "You've been acting strange today." "I went to that jewelry shop." "I know." His eyes dropped to the necklace around my neck. "Did the jeweler scare you with that story?" I hesitated. "Maybe." Daniel smiled faintly. "People like drama." He kissed my cheek. "You should try to sleep." He turned and walked back toward the bedroom. I watched him leave through the mirror, and something about the way he walked suddenly bothered me. Slow, controlled, like someone who was always thinking, always calculating. The next morning, he left for work early, earlier than usual. I waited until his car disappeared down the street. Then I moved, fast. I went straight to his office. Daniel's office was the only place in the house he preferred I didn't touch. Not because he was controlling. He always said it was just messy. Work papers, contracts, business documents. I stood at the doorway for a moment, my heart racing. "Just look," I whispered to myself. Inside, the room smelled faintly of leather and coffee. The desk was neat. Too neat. Daniel wasn't a messy person, but something about the order of everything felt staged, like a hotel room, perfect but impersonal. I opened the top drawer. Pens, paper clips, nothing unusual. Second drawer, files, real estate documents, normal. Then I opened the bottom drawer. Locked. My pulse quickened. Daniel almost never locked anything, but this drawer had a small metal lock built into the handle. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I tried something simple. Daniel's birthday. No. Our anniversary. No. Then a strange idea crossed my mind. I entered the year from 20 years ago. Click. The drawer opened. My breath caught. Inside was a small wooden box, dark oak, old. My hands trembled as I lifted it out. The lid creaked softly when I opened it. Inside were photographs, old photographs. My fingers slowly picked one up. A young woman stood beside a lake, long dark hair, bright smile. She looked happy. My stomach twisted, because she looked familiar. Not exactly like me, but similar, very similar. I flipped the photograph over. A date was written on the back, 20 years ago, and underneath it, a name, the same name engraved on the pendant. My heart began pounding violently. I grabbed another photograph. This one showed the woman standing beside a man. The picture was slightly blurred, but I could still recognize him, even though he looked younger, much younger. It was Daniel. My chest felt like it might explode. My husband, standing beside the missing woman, smiling, arm around her waist. Then I noticed something else in the box, a folded newspaper clipping. My hands shook as I opened it. The headline was small but clear. "Local woman disappears near Lakeside Trail." My eyes scanned the article quickly. Last seen leaving her apartment. Police suspect foul play. Boyfriend questioned. No evidence found. Boyfriend's name withheld by police. My throat tightened. At the bottom of the clipping was a small handwritten note. 3 words, written in Daniel's handwriting. "I warned you." My hands started shaking uncontrollably. That's when I heard something that froze my blood. A car door outside. My head snapped toward the window. Through the curtain, I saw a car pulling into the driveway. Daniel's car. My heart slammed against my ribs. He wasn't supposed to be home. Not for hours. The front door opened downstairs. His footsteps echoed in the hallway. Then his voice called out calmly, "Honey?" I stood frozen in the middle of his office, the photographs of the missing woman still clutched in my hands,
and Daniel's footsteps were slowly coming up the stairs.
If you enjoyed this story and want more suspenseful mysteries like this one, make sure to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next story.